After studying this module, you shall be able to know about various deception detection techniques, learn about polygraph, narcoanalysis and brain fingerprinting, their principles and how the various techniques are carried out on this subject. You will also be able to know about the various court judgments pertaining to these techniques. Today, with the increasing crime rate, various techniques to detect deceptions are employed. For example, brain fingerprinting, narcoanalysis and lie detection or polygraph that has various clinical, scientific, ethical and legal implications. The so-called deception detection techniques, or better termed as DDTs, are beneficial in knowing the information that has been concealed pertaining to the crime. The concealed information that is only known to the perpetrator is sometimes helpful in the process of criminal investigation. The accused is questioned in such a way that the investigators are able to divulge out the concealed facts, and that will finally help or will have a significant role in the collection of evidences. In case wherein the subject remains quiet and does not answer any of the questions put up by the investigating agencies, then to what extent the investigating agencies can compel or pressurize the suspect to disclose the concealed information also plays an important role. Today, the third degree methods have become unacceptable so as to exact information regarding the crime from the subject. Also, it is to be noted that the confession made by a police officer in the court of law is not valid. The various deception detection techniques available are widely employed by the investigating techniques. Though investigating agencies are aware of the fact that the information that has been obtained cannot be used as evidence during the trial procedure in court, they have contested that it is safer than third-degree methods used by some investigators. Here, the claim is that by using these so-called scientific procedures in fact-finding, it will directly help the investigating agencies to gather evidences, and in this manner the rate of prosecution of the guilty and also the rate of acquittal of innocent will increase. Of late, these techniques are being promoted as more accurate and best to none, without convincing evidence. But in its groundbreaking decision, the Supreme Court of India has clearly indicated that the deception detection techniques or DDTs cannot be carried out without consent. Now, polygraph. Polygraph, also called as the mechanical lie detector, is a process by which a study of functioning of different body systems is studied to detect lies. Keeler, polygraph and stenograph are in common use. It is based on principle that if a person is telling lie and if there is fear that the lie will be detected, the emotional fear results in stimulation of sympathetic nervous system that causes psychological changes, and some of these changes can be recorded also. In other words, it can be stated that a guilty subject is more likely to be concerned with lying about the relevant facts about the crime, which in turn produces a hyperarousal state which is picked up by a person trained in reading polygraph results. The lie detector or polygraph measures or records the following four parameters: blood pressure, respiration, galvanic skin reaction and pulse. To carry out the procedure of lie detection, consent of person is taken prior to the procedure and the process is explained to the concerned person. The person has to answer the question in yes or no as answers. The question will be of suggestive in nature. The person on whom the test is to be performed is asked to sit in a chair and instruments are attached to him. Arm cuff is placed for recording blood pressure and pulse. A belt is placed around the chest to record respiration and an electrode connection is attached to the tip of one side of index finger to record galvanic skin reaction. The response of person to question is recorded graphically on a single paper. Usually not more than 10 questions are asked to a person at any single sitting. Three types of questions are asked as irrelevant questions having no relation with the incident. Next, relevant questions having relation with the incident, and control questions. The questions are asked every 20 to 25 seconds and the polygraph chart is recorded in 3 to 4 minutes. Amongst all response, the response to change in respiration and galvanic skin reaction are assumed to be more reliable. Persons suffering from the disease of the respiratory and cardiovascular system, overreactive personalities, drug addicts, restless and non-cooperative individuals and mentally unsound persons are thought to be unsuitable for this test. Now, medico-legal aspects of polygraph. In this, the first point is, it is established that classification of guilty can be made with 75% to 97% accuracy, but the rate of false positive is sufficiently high. Next, thus, controversy continues regarding the accuracy of polygraph testing in detecting deception. Third, results of such tests are inadmissible in court. Fourth, due to high false positive results, questions are raised regarding the efficiency of this test to use as the sole arbitrator of guilt or innocent. The principle on which the technique of polygraph is based is data table, since the changes measured in the state of arousal are not necessarily caused because of lying or deception. Now, narcoanalysis. Narcoanalysis is a procedure of investigation of mental content of a person done after application of light general anesthetic drugs. This investigative technique is based on the principle that at a point very close to unconsciousness, the subject would be mentally incapable of resistance to questioning and incapable of inventing falsehood that he has used to conceal his guilt. It involves administration of light anesthetic agents or drugs intravenously. The drugs that are generally employed during the procedures of narcoanalysis are scopolamine, hydrobromide, sodium scnol, benzodiazepines and thiopentone sodium or sodium pentothal. The use of thiopentone sodium or sodium pentothal has shown adverse effect on individuals, which include laryngospasm, shivering and delirium that may occur during recovery. It can precipitate acute intermittent polyphyria in susceptible individuals. The drug, when induced intravenously, causes the individual to enter into several phases of anesthesia. When the individual passes into the hypnotic stage or the subconscious state, he or she becomes less inhibited and is more likely to disclose the information which the individual has concealed and which would generally not be revealed when the individual is in the conscious state. The individual or the subject may also disclose all his/her fantasies, personal wishes, impulses, instinctual drive, mishappenings, delusions, conflicts, misinterpretations, etc. The major disadvantage of narcoanalysis is that some individuals are able to maintain their capability to mislead even in the hypnotic state, while others can become extremely susceptible to questioning. This is especially worrying since investigators may frame questions in a manner that may prompt incriminatory responses. Also, in case the individual undergoing narcoanalysis takes or abuses intoxicants or drugs, then a degree of cross tolerance could occur. Therefore, in an attempt for analysis, wrong dose may be given to the subject and put the subject in coma or may even cause death. The drugs used do not guarantee that the subject will speak only the truth. The statements given or spoken by the subject in the state of hypnosis are not voluntary because the person undergoing the test is not in a clear state of mind, and that's why these haven't been admitted by the courts of law as evidence. Narcoanalysis without consent raises certain issues such as a physical assault on the body by giving injections and also multiple painful stimuli such as slapping, pinching, pushing, hitting, shaking the body and so forth to wake a person from hypnotic state to answer the question, and mental assaults through the effect of the injection on his or her mind and also an unrestricted access to the utmost privacy, the privacy of his/her own mind. In the era of evidence-based medicine, it does not have any significant role in the treatment of any psychiatric conditions. Now, medico-legal aspects of narcoanalysis. The procedure of narcoanalysis and subsequent interrogation has raised serious ethical issues for involvement of medical professionals in the procedure. Many think that narcoanalysis is a form of torture. Involvement of physicians in such procedure is nothing but abetting the torture and using the medical knowledge for inflicting torture. Therefore, the procedure of narcoanalysis suffers from problem of torture. In addition to violating the laws related to torture, narcoanalysis also violates the dignity of a person. Code of Medical Ethics prescribed by Medical Council of India clearly mentions that the physician shall not aid or abet torture, nor shall he/she be party to either infliction of mental or physical trauma. It is said that during narcoanalysis violates the established principles of Article 20(3) of the Constitution of India. On the other hand, the Bombay High Court of late ruled that subjecting 6 of the alleged in multi-crore rupee fake stamp paper case to certain physical tests involving minimum body harm, such as polygraph, narco-analysis and brain mapping, did not violate their constitutional rights significantly. Their constitutional rights, specifically the protection against self-incrimination guaranteed by Article 20(3) of Constitution of India. The judicial sanction for these methods rests on the argument that protection of Article 20(3) does not apply at the investigative stage. It is also stated that narco-analysis violates Section 161(2) of CRPC, which says that no person accused of any offence shall be compelled to be witness against himself. Now, brain mapping. Brain fingerprinting given by Dr. Lawrence A. Farwell is an instantaneous psychophysician valuation of an individual response to certain stimuli, for example pictures, words or phrases presented on a computer screen. As a forensic method, the test assesses the subject's knowledge of a crime scene or of the instrumentalities or fruits of a crime, and it can also be used to assess knowledge of the particulars of a alibi scenes or sequences of events. In the homeland security field, it can be used to detect knowledge of specific training or inside information. Brain fingerprinting uses electroencephalography (EEG) to measure event-related potentials known as the P300 electrical events beginning 300 milliseconds after exposure to a stimulus that are characteristic of the information processing that accompanies recognition of stimuli in comparison to a remembered context. Dr. Firewall has drawn out the analysis of this event-related potential further in time to take account of additional information that has not been analyzed hitherto, and he refers to his extension of the P300 wave as MER, which means memory and encoding related multifaceted electrocephalographic response. Just as a personal computer emits a characteristic sound whenever its central processing unit is transferring information from or to the hard drive, the human brain emits a characteristic P300 and MER electrical response whenever the subject responds to a stimulus by updating his memory context to take account of the stimulus. The P300 or the MER response is not evoked when the stimulus is irrelevant to the subject's memory context. Accordingly, if the person is a witness to or a perpetrator of the crime, his response to stimuli that betrays accurate details of the crime probes will evoke a P300 response. Other items known to the person regardless of whether he was present at the crime targets also evoke the response and permits the tester to establish a baseline from which to compare the person's response to the probes. Other stimuli that have no relevance either to the crime or to anything in the subject's memory events established a baseline for a flat response, no P300 evoked. The signals obtained from the subject's response to multiple presentations of approximately 1 dozen each of probe and targets and twice as many irrelevants are averaged using analytical tools that are standard in the field of EEG psychophysiology. In this way, an overall result is obtained demonstrating whether the probes have evoked a P300 recognition response or a flat non-recognition response. A similar test can be administered to probe the subject's abili defense. However, in the case of an abili, all that can usually be determined is whether the abili story has validity as the subject's remembered experience. It is not usually possible to determine whether the exact timing of the abili experience places the subjects away from the crime scene at the time of the crime. Brain fingerprinting uses standard P300 analysis, typically yields an information present or information absent result with a statistical confidence in excess of 95 VO and usually higher than 99 VO, and Dr. Farwell is able to increase the confidence factor when utilizing the additional singlet information contained in the MER. The ability of fresh, salient and detailed probes is essential to the efficiency of the test. Indeed, it is anticipated that once the reliability of the science underlying brain fingerprinting is established, the principal line of attack for parties opposing the use of a brain fingerprinting test results in a trial will be to challenge the evidentiary value of the specific probes that have been employed. Note that this is a challenge not of the scientific process of brain fingerprinting test, but of the investigation into the crime, a process that precedes the scientific brain fingerprinting test and that discovers and specifies the crime relevant information embodied in the probes. Dr. Farwell acknowledges that brain fingerprinting cannot be successfully applied in cases where the subject has been exposed to all the known details of the crime scene, fruits and instrumentalities in circumstances unrelated to committing the crime. In such a case, no variable probe would be available since probes by definition involve information that the suspect denies knowing by virtue of non-participation in the crime. Without such probes, a brain fingerprinting test would not be conducted. The investigative phase of preparing the brain fingerprinting test, which discovers the salient feature of the crime that are used as the probe stimuli, depends on the skill and judgment of the investigator and is not a scientific process. In the process of brain fingerprinting, the scientific phase starts only when during the investigation the scientific probes have been identified. The science of brain fingerprinting testing determines whether the subject responds to the probe, providing an objective result, information present or information absent. This result does not depend on the subjective judgment of the scientist conducting the test. The test result is then presented to the terrier of facts to assess the determination of guilt and innocence. Now, court judgment. In conclusion, DDT has faced a number of criticism and it is still unclear to what degree lie detectors and brain mapping can be used to reveal concealed knowledge in applied real-world settings. The Supreme Court judgment on involuntary DDTs is that it has no place in the judicial process. On the contrary, it will disrupt proceedings, causes delays and lead to numerous complications which will result in no greater degree of certainty in the process than that which already exists. Contemporary DDT needs to undergo rigorous research in normative and pathological populations. Premature application of these technologies outside research settings should be resisted. The vulnerability of the techniques to countermeasures also needs to be explored. It is also important to know the sensitivity and specificity of these tests. There should be standard operating guidelines for conducting DDT. The recent Supreme Court judgment on DDT is admirable from the scientific, human rights, ethical, legal and constitutional perspectives. Now, summary. Today, with the increasing crime rate, various techniques to detect deception are employed. For example, brain fingerprinting, narco-analysis and lie detection or polygraph that has various clinical, scientific, ethical and legal implications. The concealed information that is only known to the perpetrator is sometimes helpful in the process of criminal investigation. Polygraph, also called as the mechanical lie detector, is a process by which a study of functioning of different body systems is studied to detect lies. Keeler polygraph and Stirling M-22.Deceptograph are in common use. Persons suffering from and disease of the respiratory and cardiovascular system, overreactive personalities, drug addicts, restless and non-cooperative individuals, and mentally unsound persons are thought to be unsuitable for this test. Narcoanalysis is a procedure of investigation of mental content of a person done after application of light general anesthetic drugs. The drugs, when induced intravenously, cause the individual to enter into several phases of anesthesia. Brain fingerprinting given by Dr. Lawrence A. Farwell is an instantaneously psychophysiological valuation of an individual's response to certain stimuli, for example, pictures, words, or phrases presented on a computer screen. The Supreme Court judgment on the involuntary deities is that it has no place in the judicial process. On the contrary, it will disrupt proceedings, causes delays, and lead to numerous complications which will result in no great degree of certainty in the process than that which already exists.